The title of this video can be a bit misleading or even redundant. In some way, all Wagner's music, especially from Lohengrin and onwards, is wholly about constant musical transfiguration. It's hard to find a motif in Parsifal, Lohengrin or Tristan that doesn't undergo transformation through constantly reimagined and innovative surface structures. Instrumentation that blur the lines between identity of sound, harmonies that continually seem to reveal themselves with more meaning in every new situation in which they appear. So the answer would of course be, well, everything he does, from instrumentation to harmony to treatment of leitmotifs. But this video aims to take a closer look at how Wagner portrays transformation as such in his works, how through musical symbolism and metaphor combined with certain psychoacoustic phenomena he found an effect which he reused in countless works. We will investigate this by looking at shared characteristics between certain surface structures from multiple works, to try to decode exactly why they are all individually so well adapted for this purpose. And I promise you that we will find some striking similarities between these different situations. And whether these similarities were a conscious or unconscious choice by the composer in question is something I will let us all ponder on our own. We can definitely find, by reviewing particular consistencies in Wagner's transformation music, certain keys to understanding how he achieved his peculiar effects. I will warn you, to at least somewhat understand the connections I'm making in this video means watching all of it. Points of illumination will arrive, but not in frequency well aligned with contemporary attention spans. Kind of like an Wagner opera, I guess. I ask you for a modicum of patience and thank you for it. Let's start by looking at the opening transformation music from a rather unknown work, the Huldigungsmarsch. It was composed by Wagner specifically for Ludwig II in 1864 as a tribute to the young king after receiving his patronage. I might do a full analysis of this work in the future, but in interest of time, and to not stray from our objective on unveiling transformation, let's focus only on the opening music. Before listening, I will point out 3 general facts about the instrumentation which are important. First, all voices appear in multiple instrument families, blurring the source, making each voice into a column of sound, if you will. This has the effect of giving each voice multiple dimensions. It thickens the body of sound and dilutes the spectrum. And with this wind-heavy instrumentation, so thick in the middle register, the result is particularly ethereal. The notes unfurls like ink released into water, forming luminous clouds whose boundaries continuously dissolve into the surrounding atmosphere. Secondly, bleeding of the melodic line. It's a technique where one instrument, which was initially part of the melody, becomes part of harmony simply by sustaining a particular note along the melodic line. This has multiple effects. For one, it doesn't draw immediate attention, since we never register the initiation of the chord tone. Suddenly, the instrument seamlessly switches role from melody to harmony, becoming a temporary melodic memory, a faded remnant of the line. We also can only register the fact that it has arrived after the remaining instruments, still part of the line, continue their journey, which pushes harmonic registration into the immediate future. The third technique is shadowing, like here, where the second clarinet plays the outline of the main line an octave lower, only sustaining half notes, blurring the spectrum of the higher woods as they pass by more remote overtones. In this first listen, just hear the music, the particular haunting, almost ghostly timbre, the relentless will of the melody yearning to rise ever higher. Before deconstructing it, I want us to just experience its effects. I will highlight only one moment in the score, the key moment, if you will, where we will deep dive to find something extraordinary. Try to hear it all as one continuous process, never broken, always developing until the end. divine music. But why? Apart from the particular shadowing instrumentation that we discussed previously, what achieves this particular effect? What makes the melody so full of relentless yearning? Well, the first and the most important question is there a melody? It's funny because a comment I've received often when sharing this quite unknown work of Wagner with friends and family is that they love the melody. So let's take a look at it through the lens of a particular psychoacoustic phenomena. This is a shepherd's tone, first documented and definitively synthesized in the 1960s, 100 years after the Huldigungsmarsch was composed. What you're hearing is pitch in seemingly infinite ascension, a rising line that never seems to reach an end, yet indefinitely rises in pitch. This phenomena is achieved through subsequently fading pitches as they reach the edge of human hearing, while simultaneously fading in the corresponding note a couple of octaves lower, so that each line, when reaching the edge of what's perceptible, is gradually replaced by a lower variant. This way we never register finality, arrival, or let alone the start of any of the notes. The music rises forever in our ears, and it can be quite dizzying after a while. So what does this have to do with our lovely Huldigungsmarsch? Well, let's look at that beautiful melody, shall we? This line, because spoiler alert, it's not a melody, is made up of 4 entire bars of continually ascending stepwise motion. At times chromatic and at times diatonic, but no other interval than that of a second and no other direction than upwards. After the line reaches its intended goal of C in the upper octaves of the orchestra to tonicize the mediant C minor, we instead arrive in a deceptive situation. Wagner gives us the countertonic of C minor, which is A flat, transforming our top C note, which was intended to be a root note, into a third of the substitute A flat chord. Wagner now extends this harmonic situation. For 6 entire beats we float in a flat land with no real tonic in sight. And in this moment the true magic happens. It's almost unnoticeable, which is the entire point. During this time of sustained deception, the top note of C gradually fades out, while the next ascending step from C, which is D, is faded in an octave lower. This way, the rising line can continue for another 4 bars without escaping the register of the orchestra, but more importantly, without us as listeners ever experiencing any lessening of tension. So the top note of this music is effectively just an 8-bar long ascending scale with 1 transposition at the midpoint, turning an ascending second into a descending minor 7th. The genius lies in placing this transposition on a weak beat, directly following a dynamic climax, blurred by the bleeding lines of the upper woodwinds. This way, it's almost seamless, and unaware of this phenomena, all you experience is continually rising tension. In subsequent examples, we will focus on this interval of the descending 7th, so keep that in mind. For now, let's continue. So, why do we experience melody? Well, because it does exist, just not in the top voice. The first horn carries almost all melodic fragments, but actually have quite little movement overall, a small ambitus, and often plays the role of harmony, only occasionally stating fragments of different character. All of the effect is to be found in the illusory top voice. There are hundreds of more things to point out in the score, like immediate imitation and insane voice crossings, but we will leave it at that for now. Let's hear it again. Pay particular attention, lean in if you will, to that static moment where the descending 7th momentarily breaks the line. It's absolute magic. It's funny, and has nothing to do with analysis, but this music always summons the same picture in my mind. It's like riding an ancient ethereal carousel along an infinite spiral, somehow into and simultaneously out of the universe. Absolutely unbelievable music. Let's continue and see the example where I believe, and this is totally hypothetical, this material is unconsciously borrowed from, namely the prelude of our beloved Tristan. Either way, it shares the exact same characteristics, and that is, after all, the goal, lest we forget, to find consistency in the writing of transformation music. This music needs less explanation, and if you want further insight and context, I will link my Tristan videos in the description. It's a continually rising line emanating from the violins that once it reaches the top note of C sharp is transferred from the violins to the cellos, just for it to plunge down by the interval of a minor seventh. After this, the cellos continue the ascension of the line until they reach the B note, to then again dive down by the interval of a minor seventh to a C sharp. Again, Wagner uses the same technique here as in the Huldigungsmarsch, sustaining the B notes in the violins, blurring the line while the cellos dive down. It's eerily similar, even though the surface structure is more dramatic, romantic, and song-like. Listen. Again, Wagner employs this particular interval in the same way, a continually rising line, only broken by an octave transposition of the next step. I should probably clarify, the interval of a minor seventh is inversionally related to the major second. This means that theoretically, Wagner has just written a continuously rising melodic line that ascends for the full duration of the example, only occasionally transposing the next subsequent step down by an octave. It has multiple effects. For one, we experience it as a huge, quite dramatic intervallic choice, which it is, physiologically, but in terms of pitch category and in terms of harmonic implication, it's not. It gives the impression of vastness while also serving as a clever device for indefinite rising tension. It's also, if you let me go out on a limb, quite perfectly illustrates transfiguration symbolically. The next implied step of the scale does arrive, but transformed by re-registration, and all the implications that that has for the particular instrument performing it. Here's a quick comparison between our two examples thus far. Let's take a look at how Wagner uses this interval in our last example. This is the transformation motif of Götterdämmerung as appearing at the end of the opera. This music functions differently, but draws a lot of its power from the same logic. Let's first hear it with its corresponding harmony and then by itself. A strange but very useful quality of this motif is that it actually only consists of 3 unique pitches, in this particular key, namely C sharp, D, and E. Although it certainly contains 8 notes altogether if you exclude tied notes, what we are actually hearing is just 3 rhythmicized pitches of stepwise motion, with the last one, again, being transposed by an octave, resulting in our descending minor seventh. I don't think that anyone listening to this motif without the critical attention we currently have would ever intuit that only 3 pitches were in action here. Furthermore, Listen to what happens if we just remove the faster notes. And ignore the fact that the last E is transposed. We get an oscillation between the notes D and E. The very practical thing about using so few notes to construct an 8-note motif stretching 2 bars of 12/8 time is that it's extremely susceptible to all types of harmonic recontextualization. You have a very active and agile leitmotif that affords itself a lot of space thanks to our descending seventh, without imposing clear or limiting boundaries for potential harmonic treatment. Usually, the difficulty for a composer when writing longer motifs with a lot of motion is that you paint yourself into a corner, so to speak. There is so much implied harmony in the line that it creates a context for itself, which the accompaniment as a consequence has to acclimate itself to. Wagner cleverly avoids this. Although this example functions differently from our previous excerpts, I think it's undeniable that the utilization of the descending seventh in this motif in particular shows how extremely effective its implementation is in Wagner's transformation music. This is going to be our last audio and score excerpt, and again I would like to invite you to take note of this descending seventh and its role, which in this case is continual modulation, and how, whether Wagner intended it or not, this descending seventh interval becomes a signifying interval for the act of transformation in multiple of Wagner's works. As we have just seen, it appears as such, both in Tristan, the Huldigungsmarsch here in Götterdämmerung, but also in Parsifal, music that we might return to another time. I'm planning to do a larger video on that opera and its transformational counterpart. Until then, enjoy this final contemplation and thank you for listening. Julie.